Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Rebel News live stream on this, a Wednesday, February 26, 2025. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a bit about my co-host. Folks, do you know that today is National Inconvenience Yourself Day? And when my co-host wants to get inconvenienced, she just flies to Toronto and drives in Toronto traffic because that's inconvenient 24/7, 365 days a year. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is the sensational Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing there, Sheila?
David, I'm great. Lisa and I were reminiscing last week about when you took us on the nickel and dime tour of Toronto attractions, and I got super car sick in your vehicle and you had to pull over on the freeway to deal with my inner ear sensitivities. It's also Pink Shirt Day. For those of you who need a shirt to stop you from bullying. And it's also Black Lives Matter Day. Because apparently, according to the website before me, it says, let's vow not to have another George Floyd or Trayvon Martin incident. I agree with that, but probably for different reasons than these people suggest.
Wait, Sheila, when is All Lives Matter Day? You know, I know that's insensitive in some circles. Apparently. I bet you there is no such thing.
No, there's definitely not. It's also for Pete's Sake Day.
Yes.
Whatever that means.
Doesn't that date you if you say for Pete's sake? I mean, is there anyone under 70 that says that?
No. Well, I don't know. My daughter swears like Ned Flanders. Like she does not swear at all. It's flipping this and frickin' this and fudge this. Like she doesn't swear. She is such a sweater wearing Ned Flanders for an almost 19-year-old woman. It's weird.
And that's what makes her so lovable, Sheila.
Among a few of reasons. Let's tell everybody what we're doing and then we'll talk about the news of the day because hopefully many of you have recovered and have had your psychic energy levels go back up after having to watch that absolute energy vampire, Mark Carney, do his best to seem like not a robot wearing a skin suit for 2 hours last night in the Liberal leadership debate. But we'll get to that in a second. This is Rebel Roundup. It's where we talk about the news of the day, completely unscripted. And we do something else that's a little bit special. We want to hear from you. We allow you to get involved. So if you're watching us on Rumble, thank you so much for supporting Rumble. They're a great free speech platform, and they stood by Rebel News when nobody else did. So if you're watching us over there, you can leave a paid chat called the Rumble Rant if it's over the $5 US cutoff. We will do our best to address it on air. If it's under the $5 US cutoff, oh my goodness, the dog is bumping my camera. we'll do our best to address it on air, but we make no guarantees. But as you know, every little bit helps. Now, if you are watching us on the very recently remonetized Rebel News YouTube channel, I'm not sure how long that's going to last, by the way, but we're doing our best to make sure that it doesn't just vaporize, because a lot of you prefer to watch us that way. That way, it's convenient. I get it. We understand. So you can leave us a super chat over there now, and we will read it on air. Same rules apply. And after the fact, I think you can also leave us a super thanks. So if you missed the show live, but you're re-watching the recorded version of the show, you can leave a super thanks there. So we appreciate you. We appreciate that. David, take us to the first story.
Well, let's get right into the Liberal leadership debate, the English version, which I understand was a little more exciting
No.
than the French version, but still, it was a discussion amongst friends, I think, at the end of the day. But one of the incredible takeaways, and this reminds me, I'll save my thunder for after the clip, Sheila, was Chrystia Freeland speaking about a discussion she had with a 4-year-old girl. And it eerily reminds me of something that happened in the early 90s where Chrétien had a discussion too. And here's the connection. Do these people even exist? So let's roll what Fraulein Freeland had to say at last night's leadership debate.
A few weeks ago in Saskatoon, I met a 4-year-old girl named Ari. She asked me, "Can you stop Trump from invading Canada?" Ari is a smart girl, and she's asking the right question. I'm running to be leader of the Liberal Party and the next Prime Minister of Canada because Trump is posing the gravest challenge our country has faced since the Second World War.
Okay, here's what we have to do, Sheila. If journalists are still doing their job of investigative journalism, can we please track down little Ari in Saskatchewan to see if this person actually exists or is a figment of Fraulein Freeland's imagination? Why I bring that up, Jean Chrétien, when he was prime minister, had this incredible anecdote where he said when he'd be walking to the House of Commons, there was a homeless man. He would have discussions with, well, listen, with some of the homeless people out there, you're not hanging around to discuss anything. You are running for the hills because you don't know if this is somebody hopped up on drugs, has mental health issues. But the bottom line, Sheila, is that when journalists back in the 90s were actually doing journalism, they sunk their teeth into this. Where is this homeless man? Who is this homeless man? What did they discuss? How did this person become so unfortunate to become homeless? Well, false, did not exist. Sheila, I don't know if this 4-year-old girl exists or not, but me right now, I ain't buying it.
You know, we talked about this yesterday on the live stream, and I talked about it at length with an actual Saskatchewan mom of 6. So she's had 6 experiences with a 4-year-old from Saskatchewan. That's our Tuesday co-host, Elise Merle. And we have come to the conclusion, I think as most people in this country have, that this little Ari in Saskatoon does not exist. And the reason we're talking about this again is because Freeland, despite robust mockery, this is the 3rd time she's made this claim. So she did it on X. She did it in the French language debate. She thought it landed well, so she did it again. And it's ridiculous. Like, have you people met a 4-year-old? I've met 3. I've raised 3 of them and met plenty of them. And imagine, and you know what? I got some bright kids, but imagine one of them saying, "Excuse me. Good day to you, Madam Freeland. Would you be so kind as to allow me to posit a query to you about the dangerous trepidation that the new President Donald Trump puts the nation in?" Give me a break. This is a 4-year-old. The only thing that they might be concerned about is Freeland telling their mommy to cancel Disney Plus. They don't know about Donald Trump. But this goes to the issue of the Liberals thinking, and by and large, everybody on the left thinking, that 4-year-olds are fully formed adults just in itty bitty bodies. And so they have valid opinions on politics the same way that they can have valid opinions on what they should medically do to their bodies, which could damage them in perpetuity. And I'm just leaving it there because of YouTube.
No, I understand. And Sheila, I agree with you. I've been around 4-year-olds when my sons were of that age, and I can tell you they weren't wondering about who's occupying the White House. Typically, a question is SpongeBob on yet, Dad? Can we watch a few episodes?
Can I have a cookie?
Yes.
Like, what did I tweeted something obnoxious, as I tend to do on X, and it was just like, yeah, that's fine. But in Edmonton, I met a 9-year-old or a 9-month-old who, in between drags of a little bitty meth pipe, wondered to me why Pierre Poilievre is going to stop Safe Supply. Like, it's just so stupid. You can make anything. You know what? You never have to give proof if all you do is lie. There's a lot of that happening.
And I believe Freeland lied about canceling the Disney Plus subscription. I don't believe that. And even if she did, for someone of her net worth, that's not even couch change. So, please spare me. And by the way, I just want to clarify something, Sheila. When I say journalists go out and find this 4-year-old, of course, I don't mean to scrum this little 4-year-old girl. I mean to...
I don't know. She sounds scrummable if you believe Chrystia Freeland.
Well, Freeland knows how to deal with impolite scrumming. She gets her RCMP bodyguard to physically assault and falsely arrest journalists. No, but if this conversation actually happened, this is the smartest 4-year-old girl in Canada. I would love to interview the parent, the mother or father, and say, how did you raise this precious little tot to be so cognizant about transnational issues? Because that's amazing. And she might be a statistical anomaly in Canada of one.
Yeah. Or she's just a lie, a figment of Freeland's imagination, as real as a Disney princess.
Just like Jean Chrétien's homeless man.
Yeah.
But wait, folks, as they used to say on those Ronco ads, there's more.
There's
this
more.
time we have
Freeland says the quiet part out loud. She says we need to, quote, build a new world order.
Ooh, say it ain't so.
We need to recognize President Trump has said dozens of times he wants us to be the 51st state. I don't think any of us wants to be the leader who was asleep at the wheel and didn't get Canada defended, did not work with our Democratic allies to protect our borders. They want to work with us. It's time for us to step up at home, to urgently reach out to them and build a new world order where democracy and Canadian sovereignty is protected.
Sheila, does Freeland not understand that New World Order is really debased language for anyone with 2 brain cells? I mean, we know what New World Order means. That is undemocratic. But then again, this is somebody who was giddy back in February of 2022 when she froze the bank accounts of Canadians, the ones who had the temerity to donate to the Freedom Convoy. That's New World Order in action. The government going into your bank account and freezing it. So, Sheila, I want to ask you this. She's trying to get brownie points. She's trying to get popular support. Who does New World Order, a promise of that, appeal to?
Her WEF overlords.
Well, that's a limited number of voters.
Undecided Carney voters. I mean, here's the thing on the debate stage last night, and I think anybody who suffered through it will probably agree with me. It was the furthest possible thing from a debate. It was like a fireside chat of co-collaborators. And everybody else on the stage, I think, is resigned to the Carney coronation. And what we saw there was people angling for positions in a future short-lived cabinet and then a shadow cabinet. Nobody actually really thinks that they're going to beat Carney. And we're all just part of the charade. They're running a robust leadership campaign, really to fill up the war chest to take on the Conservatives in the next federal election. This isn't about like a free and liberal exchange of ideas, or let's lay bare the problems with the party and see who's best suited to fix them. They're not talking about that stuff at all. They're not talking about their own policies that led them down this path. In fact, they specifically excluded anyone that from the leadership that might bring up those things. Yeah. Ruby Dalla. So this is just a fundraising effort for the Liberals. That's all it is at the end of the day.
I think you're right, Sheila. I think the closer we get to March 9th, and if these meetings might have already occurred, the likes of Chrystia Freeland, Karina Gould, they've already reached out to the Mark Carney camp and said words to the effect of, we won't put up a lot of resistance. We'll throw our support behind you. We'll endorse him. But in terms of the quid pro quo, here's the cabinet position that we want. So you scratch our backs, we'll scratch yours. We'll make it nice and friendly. We won't air our dirty laundry in public. Now, the third clip, this is, to me, Sheila, an astonishing clip. And I'll save my thunder for after it runs. But it's Chrystia Freeland talking about outgoing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he of the long goodbye. And I think her words are staggering for all the wrong reasons. Let's run that one.
Well, since we're talking about climate action, I do want to start by recognizing the role that I think history is going to judge very positively that Prime Minister Trudeau has played on climate action. He is the first Canadian Prime Minister to really move the dial. And under his leadership, we have become a country where the economy is growing while emissions are going down. That is a huge accomplishment for our children and grandchildren. On the consumer price on pollution, I was the first candidate to come out and say I would lift that. And the reason is really simple. Democracy is about listening to people. And Canadians were very clear with us in conversations with me that they didn't think that policy worked for them. What we need is carrots. We need incentives to double down on the incentives I put in place, the Canada Growth Fund, the investment tax credits, to create a green transition that delivers jobs and growth for the Canadian economy. I know that we can do that, and I know that that's what Canadians need. And if we let Pierre Poilievre be elected, that will be the end of climate action in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
I accept those terms. All right.
Great rebuttal,
Stop
Sheila.
it. I like them already.
Yeah, I love, her talking about, a democracy, meaning that, you listen to others. Unless, of course, Fraulein Freeland doesn't like what she's hearing, then you'll find yourself handcuffed in the back of a York Regional Police cruiser. Anyway, the thing I'm getting at here, Sheila, let's not forget, Freeland is the reason there is a Liberal leadership convention. Back in January, she hastily tenured her letter of resignation, and the dominoes tumbled, and it was just before the budget, and the dominoes tumbled in such a way that Blackface couldn't rag the puck any longer. He had to announce he was stepping down, or eventually stepping down. What I'm getting at is she put the knife in Trudeau's back. Last night, she had the opportunity to twist the blade, but instead she took the knife out, talking about how history is going to, recognize Trudeau, yesterday's man, something she owes nothing to, as a leader, a hero. Sheila, I'm baffled at the strategy here.
Well, because Carney is just the brain inside of Trudeau's head, so you don't badmouth Trudeau, because ideally then you'd be badmouthing Carney, because everything that Trudeau said and did came from Carney, and she wants to make sure that she is deputy prime minister in a Carney cabinet. I think that's really the end goal for her here today. But yeah, the gall of somebody saying democracy is about listening. Did you listen to anybody in the Freedom Convoy before you froze their bank accounts, you hyena of a woman?
Unbelievable. And for those out there who always say, don't you have anything nice to say about a Liberal?
No.
I'll tell you this much, Sheila. I was having a deja vu kind of experience looking at Fraulein Freeland last night. That is a Farrah Fawcett Majors haircut, if ever I've seen one, from the mid-70s. That's a good thing. What do you say, as a lady, you understand these things, Sheila? Was she in the beauty parlor for 3 or 4
Oh yeah.
hours to pull off that look?
No, look, I am rough around the edges, but I will tell you that she does look good there, like better.
Yeah.
She looks better, less, what's the right word? Haggard. Her hair, and again, I've got unruly hair, so take this for what it's worth. But her hair looks good there. So it can be done, I guess, is the moral of the story. It can be done.
Well, it reminds me of the movie Raise the Titanic. Anyway, enough of the Fraulein. Let's go to Mark Carney, aka Justin Trudeau 2.0 on steroids.
I think he's Trudeau 1.0. Trudeau 0.5, like, you know what I mean? Trudeau 0.5. I don't know where he fits into the progression of Trudeau, but I don't think Trudeau has said or done anything in the last half decade that didn't come out of this guy's boring mouth.
Indeed.
For sure.
And without further ado, let's throw to Mr. Charisma himself.
Oh, God.
Yes, I support ending the consumer carbon tax. And to be absolutely clear, that's on consumers, it'd be on small businesses, it'd be on farms as well. The reason I do is twofold. One, politics is about people, and this has become too divisive for Canadians. Okay. Secondly, the contribution of the consumer carbon tax is a little less than 10% of our emissions reductions. I've spent a substantial portion of my career working on these issues, and there are better ways to accomplish those emissions reductions. Particularly, on my proposal, is that big polluters will pay Canadians, not taxpayers, big polluters will pay Canadians for their emission reductions and will improve the options for and the ability of those companies, or some of our most important companies, to get their own emissions down.
Sheila, the so-called big polluters, like Canadian steel companies,
I was going to
some
say.
of whom, like Algoma, are paying about one quarter of total revenues in carbon tax right now. And that's before the April 1st increase. Sheila, what I'm getting at is that Mark Carney, God bless him for being honest, that he's committed to carbon taxes. But for those voters out there on the fence, now that you know that carbon tax Carney is not going to make those carbon taxes go away, he's going to continue to make your life miserable with cost of living increases. What, Sheila, would cause anyone, even, a liberal, to vote for this man, given this decade of vandalism we've seen, basically under his proxy, if you will, Justin Trudeau?
Mark Carney's problem with the carbon tax is that you know that it's the carbon tax making your life more expensive. And that's, for him, the problem with the consumer carbon tax is it's just a tad too transparent. Like, it does add up in all these sorts of ways that you know it's doing it to you, but you can't see it at the grocery till. But you can see the consumer carbon tax on your electricity. You can see it on your home heating. You can see the consumer carbon tax. That's his problem with it. Like, it's making the cost of groceries more expensive because you've got to transport those groceries. You've got to cool or heat those groceries in the store. You've got to pay for the bricks and mortar building. And so it adds along the cost all the way. Mark Carney's problem is you can look on your bill and see the carbon tax on your electricity bill. So he says, you know what we're going to do? We're going to just kick it upstream. They can pass it along to the consumer, and it will be obscured from the consumer view. So that's the first problem. Now, here's the real problem for the Canadian economy. We've got Donald Trump in the United States saying, we're going to build everything in America again. We want the Rust Belt to be the Chrome Belt again. And what's going to happen? Trump's going to make the case to the Canadian manufacturer. These guys not only are not going to take away the carbon tax, they're going to stick it directly on you and make it worse. Why wouldn't you just come and do business in Ohio, where you're not going to be punished for being a builder?
Sheila, that's exactly where I was going with the Algoma Steel example, already paying about a quarter in carbon taxes of their total annual revenues. Forget about tariffs. What is a carbon tax but an indirect tariff? If
Yeah,
I'm the
sure.
CEO of Algoma, I'm doing what you just said. I'm looking at Ohio or Pennsylvania and saying, adios, Canada. My own government has made it too expensive for me to operate here at an acceptable, profitable level. And to your other point, going upstream, Sheila, surely you're not saying if the carbon tax doesn't apply to consumers, but only applies to the farmer and then the trucker and then the retailer, surely those sectors of the economy, they'll absorb the tax, won't
Oh,
they?
right. Oh, definitely. They're not going to definitely never be tacked on to the cost of a consumer good, just hidden in the cost of a consumer good. Yeah,
Unbelievable.
I mean, and let's not forget, like places like Algoma, they're getting it coming and going. They're going to get it taxed on their emissions, but they're also getting taxed on their inputs,
Yep.
right? Because those are seriously um, energy intensive industries to manufacture steel. So just on your energy inputs, you're getting it and then going out the door. Why would you do business in Canada? Why?
Indeed. And here's another reason not to. Let's throw to our last clip on this, which is Mark Carney, aka Justin Trudeau's economic advisor for 5 years, weighing in on. Well, let's try to make sense of what he's trying to say, folks.
I want to be clear about the, quote, strength of our economy. Our economy over the last 5 years has been driven by a big increase in the labor force, which was largely because of a surge in immigration, is now trying to be controlled, and by government spending that grew over 9% year after year after year, twice the rate of growth of our economy. Okay, so our economy was weak before we got to the point of these threats from President Trump. That's why we need big changes. That's the reason I'm here. That's why we need big changes to how we're managing this economy.
You know, Sheila, I'm going to cut to the chase here. Last week, I was at the Pierre Poilievre press conference in West End, Toronto. It was a brilliant presser for Mr. Poilievre, and it had nothing to do with excluding almost all of the mainstream media and only taking questions from independent media, such as ourselves included, Rebel News. But it was at a food bank, Sheila, and Poilievre made the profound point that going back to 2020, and that's the same year Mark Carney signed on as Justin Trudeau's economic advisor, this particular food bank, just one food bank in West End, Toronto alone, was servicing 10,000 regular clients. And in 2025, 5 years later, it is now servicing 70,000 regular clients. That is Mark Carney economics for you right there, Sheila.
Yeah, I hope these liberal leadership candidates can find the people who have been in charge for the last 10 years and ask them why they did all these terrible things to the Canadian economy. Like, that's, again, why they couldn't have Ruby Dalla on that stage,
Yep.
right? Because Ruby Dalla, while she is a liberal, is the only one not involved in the economic terrorism we've been subject to at the hands of the Liberal Party. She can say, like, okay, I didn't do any of this. These guys did. Mark Carney, the phone calls coming from inside the House. He's complaining about the exact time he has been an official economics advisor to the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, which is a convenient title to get him around ethics rules.
So, Sheila, who is buying this rubbish? It's very reminiscent
The
of what
media.
we saw. Well, yeah, of course, but they have skin in the
Torontonians.
game. You know, they have their funding that they're fretting about losing and going bankrupt. But it is very reminiscent of the U.S. election last year, in which Kamala Harris, who was the vice president, i.e. number 2 in charge of the past 4 years in the USA, branding herself as an agent of change.
Right.
Much like Mark Carney says, I'm an outsider. You're the ultimate insider.
Right.
You know, Americans didn't buy it. South of the border, do you think anyone, because I've seen some disturbing polls, Sheila, about allegedly the Liberals narrowing the gap, that it might be a horse race when the next election is called. Are people being bamboozled, or are these polls, I guess, push polls, I guess propaganda more than actual accurate scientific polling?
There could be some of that, but as I said on Monday, I do not have a lot of faith in my fellow Canadians who are east of, let's say, Winnipeg. I don't have a lot of faith in them. They've let us down repeatedly. I don't understand why they vote the way that they do. They see crime and out of control inflation and out of control housing costs, and they can't afford groceries, and yet they continue to vote for the party that brought them all of those things. And out here in the West, we have not been doing that. We couldn't vote blue any harder than we do. So I don't know. But I think hopefully it will go the same way as the American election, wherein the media and the Liberals are completely blindsided by what unfolds on election day.
Indeed, and I don't know if you could see it, Sheila, but super producer Olivia put up the most recent poll right off the hopper by Ipsos, and it's showing basically a 2% lead for the Liberals. I just can't believe it. Maybe I'm a
I don't.
Pollyanna here, but that
Here's
it
the
doesn't
thing.
make sense.
Here's the thing, what I said to Ezra last night on the live stream. This is all fine. This is a honeymoon bump, because we have to remember the reasons for the prorogation. One of them is to allow the Liberals time to select a new leader, or just coronate a new leader, as the case may be. The other reason is the $200 million money laundering scandal of the Green Slush Fund. The Liberals would not turn over those documents, which will, in my prediction, show evidence of serious conflicts of interest and quite likely crimes, like the stuff that you would go to jail for a very long time if you were in the United States. The Liberals allowed Parliament to devolve into gridlock because of that, because they don't want to turn those documents over, which will be ultimately turned over to the RCMP. And a lot of the people involved in that are now donating to the Carney campaign. Annette Vucherin, head of the Green Slush Fund, maxed out her donations to Mark Carney. So take that for what you will. But I think we're going to learn a lot more about Mark Carney in the coming days. And if you think the conservative researchers haven't been going through every document that they can get their hands on, prepared then to be surprised, because things are already coming out today about how Mark Carney couldn't even tell the truth last night. He hasn't been telling the truth about when Brookfield decided to move to the United States. You're going to see trickle scandals of Mark Carney coming out, and just wait for his ethics disclosures.
On that point, and Pierre Poilievre called him out as a liar. He said they didn't make that move until January, but it was voted on October 31st, Halloween.
Oh, right. And Mark Carney sent a letter urging shareholders to agree with moving the office to Donald Trump's dangerous New York.
So this business that was out of my hands. One last thing about Carney before we move on. It's not on the docket, Sheila, but to me, this is inexplicable, because it is very important as toward events of tomorrow here in Ontario, the provincial election that nobody wants, but never mind. Bonnie Crombie, the Liberal leader, came out yesterday and endorsed Mark Carney. Now, I get it. Bonnie Crombie's a Liberal. We know that. She's running for the provincial version of the Liberals. But Sheila, why would she do that? Why would she throw her lot in front of Mark Carney on the eve of a provincial election in which she is in a dogfight to win her own riding? As we reported last week, Sneaky Patrick Brown has a full court press with City of Brampton senior staffers working to get Patrick Brown's mother-in-law elected. And the indicators are they might, Sneaky Patrick might pull it off. So do you see that in such a photo finish, allegedly electoral race, as a plus for Bonnie Crombie to come out and endorse Carney before the provincial election?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. Because
Okay.
I think she knows that she's going to lose her seat. And
Ah,
so she's going to run for the federal Liberals.
you know what, Sheila? You are brilliant. You're not just a pretty
you.
face. I never even thought of that. She's already packing her parachute.
Yeah, she's going to just parachute right into the federal Liberals. That's what this is about. Everybody is angling for position in a shadow cabinet. That's what's happening here.
See, folks, that's why
Um,
Sheila Gunn Reid gets paid the big bucks.
um, depends on how you would describe big bucks, but I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Well, you're
But
not quite at Rachel Maddow getting 25 million US to do one show a week, but anyways, hope
that's
abounds.
wild. It's like another universe,
I know.
American TV people, right?
Yeah.
As Dave points out behind the scenes here in the Rebel News Slack channel, this is very 2009, and I brought this up on the comparisons between Michael Ignatieff, who was a Liberal leader at the time, and Mark Carney, as in he didn't come back for you. That was like the campaign slogan that they had with Michael Ignatieff, who had been out of the country being a professor or some baloney like that. And he was an egg-headed academic who was unrelatable and elitist. And then he came back to lead the Liberals. And the media, again, they were like so energized and excited at this very boring man.
Yeah.
And the polls showed that a Michael Ignatieff, who didn't come back for you, he was going to beat the Conservatives. It was like this surge in Liberal support because he was so charismatic. Sound familiar, right?
And you know what, Sheila?
And he lost.
I want to thank Dave for digging that up. Thank you, Dave. And I want to speak about a personal anecdote which tells you everything you need to know about Liberals, because this really stings me whenever I see Ignatieff. I had a bet back then with Marianne Mead Ward, who went on to become the mayor of Burlington. And it was simply this, $100. The moment the Liberals lose, he is gone. He will not hang around, even if he wins his own seat. I was correct. She was wrong. She welched on the bet. She still owes me $100. I don't know what it is right now with interest, but Sheila, that tells you all you need to know. Because if I had lost the bet, I would be a man of honor and give her a crisp brownie and said, "There you go, Marianne Mead Ward." So there you go. You can't trust a Liberal today.
At least that one. YouTube says we can't make broad sweeping statements about people, apparently.
Yeah.
Okay, let's we've got a quick ad read, and then we'll do a Rebel News ad, and then we'll go into Carney stuff. Conservatives, like I said, you'll see the trickle out of information that they have very clearly stockpiled on Mark Carney. I bet you they read that horrible book Values, where he is like this close to calling for depopulation, but never quite gets there. So we'll discuss that. They held a press conference at 8:15 Alberta time. The Conservatives did this morning to discuss Carney's lies on the debate stage last night. But before we do, we've got a quick message from our friends at Patriot Mobile. Please allow us to pay the bills for a second, as Ezra says. Switch to Patriot Mobile for your cell phone service and get your first 2 months free when you use promo code VICTORY. Offer expires this Friday, February 28th at 8 p.m. Central Time. Sign up now at patriotmobile.com or 972 Patriot. Excuse me there. I switched the numbers around. 972 Patriot. Okay, let's do an ad break for Rebel News, and then we'll talk more about our next very short-lived Prime Minister.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
I've got a better idea than tariffs. What would an America First strategy for Canada-U.S. trade look like? Is there room for a Trump-style mega deal even bigger than Greenland? A dozen years ago, I wrote a best-selling book called Ethical Oil, The Case for Canada's Oil Sands, which made the liberal argument that the oil sands are the fair trade coffee of the world's oil industry. In my new book, Deal of the Century, I look at Canada-U.S. trade through an America First lens, and I come to the conclusion that far from putting tariffs on Canadian oil, Donald Trump should ink a 50-year, $13 trillion deal to buy all 170 billion barrels of Canada's oil sands, shutting out China and giving Canada the means to pay for a rebuilt military. And as for yanking Trudeau's chain, well, he'll be gone as prime minister in a few weeks, but I've got a better suggestion for how Trump can slap Trudeau around a bit without hurting America's economic interests. That's in the book too. Get your copy now at dealofthecenturybook.com. And trust me, Trudeau doesn't want you to see this.
Well, geez, if the big boss man, Ezra Levent, Sheila, is saying Trudeau doesn't want you to see this, does this mean Ezra's going to get fined again by Elections Canada for publishing something insensitive during an election?
Probably. You know, the only good thing is that it was not published during the writ period, because books critical of the governing party, only if the governing party is Liberal, while those are illegal during the writ period. In this Orwellian version of the country we used to know as Canada. We've got, from this morning, the press conference with Michael Barrett, Conservative MP Michael Barrett. He is my fantasy football parliament choice for Doge minister, the Minister of Procurement, which should be the Minister of Anti-Procurement. I hope, going forward. He calls out Mark Carney for lying during last night's Liberal leadership debate about his company, Brookfield Asset Management. So we alluded to this. Let's see what they had to say.
Last night, Mark Carney lied to Canadians. He lied to Canadians, saying that his company, Brookfield Asset Management, only moved their headquarters from Canada to Donald Trump's hometown of New York City after he had resigned from the board. Now, we all know that Brookfield made that announcement on October the 31st, proving that Mr. Carney was lying to Canadians. But this morning, we can share with you a letter signed by Mark Carney on December the 1st. Now, this is just days after Donald Trump had threatened Canada for the first time with unjustified tariffs. Now, this letter says that the decision by the board, of which Mark Carney at that time was chair, was unanimous to move the headquarters and Canadian jobs to Donald Trump's hometown of New York City. And the letter implores shareholders, urges them to support the move. Now, this is not surprising, but it is extraordinary to have Mark Carney stand before Canadians and in response to media questions to lie. It's now more important than ever that he disclose all of his financial interests and conflicts of interest, knowing that he's been advising the Liberals and Justin Trudeau for 5 years and not having disclosed what his interests were to this point.
And Sheila, I just want to make a quick correction. When we alluded to that announcement earlier, I said wrongly it was Pierre Poilievre. I was only hearing the audio en route to the office. And I got to tell you, is it just me or do I need my ears checked?
Yes.
Does Michael Barrett sound a little like Pierre Poilievre? If you close your eyes, to me, they kind of sound similar. I would have sworn that was Mr. Poilievre saying that. But what do you
Wasn't
say?
enough snark there for it to be Poilievre.
Good smirk.
Yeah.
But yeah, we already discussed this. Caught in a lie, red-handed. It's not the Conservatives saying that. They've got the proof in the pudding. They've got the smoking gun written memo, don't they? So do we know if Mark Carney has tried to wiggle his way out of this one yet?
I guess we'll see if the media actually does its job in this country, and we know
Oh,
they
are you serious?
likely. No, I'm joking. They're probably not going to, because they know that Mark Carney will continue their subsidies in perpetuity, as long as they protect him. So, I mean, and he won't answer questions from independent media who will ask him about why he's lying when there's a paper trail. Like, that is a special level of gall and gaslighting to lie to Canadians when there's a paper trail which lays out the timeline to debunk your lies. He just knows that he's never going to get fact checked by the media on it.
100%. Let's move on to another Liberal. That would be Ontario Premier Doug Ford. He has some interesting words to say about tariffs and going to war, a war that, in my opinion, Sheila, we cannot lose, whether it's a province or the whole country. But let us see what Mr. Ford has to say about alleged impending tariffs on Ontario and Canada.
And I'm encouraging every other premier in the country, pull the U.S. alcohol off your shelves. That's number one. Number two, we have $30 billion of procurement. We will pull every contract off any U.S. companies, especially we do a lot in the tech sector. They're done. They're gone. We're reviewing the cost of electricity we're sending down there. And if he puts tariffs on anything in Canada or Ontario, they're getting a tariff on their electricity. And then we'll go to the next stage and we'll wait to see what happens from there. But then we have a strong list. We're working collaboratively with all the premiers in the federal government to make sure we have retaliatory measures. And I've always said it's dollar for dollar, tariff for tariff. But we're all working well as Team Canada, and we're going to continue working well, and we'll be ready for anything that comes our way.
Premier Ford, please, to paraphrase Charlton Heston in Planet of the Apes, would you get your stinking, filthy paws off my Kentucky bourbon? Or because all you're doing really is give me another reason to drive down to Buffalo and get it cheaper anyways. Gee, I wonder why that is. The markup that the LCBO, the liquor monopoly, puts on hard liquor. And, Sheila, I don't want to be snarky here, but I just wonder if Doug Ford is so animated about a tariff war because he looks at the ingredients that goes into cherry cheesecake, his favorite food stuff, and maybe he realizes he's in for a personal hit. I mean, cherries outside of summer in Ontario, they got to come in from elsewhere. So I wonder if that's his motivation. What do you think?
I believe that he used canned cherries in that recipe, if I recall correctly.
What a horrible recipe that was.
Oh, it was just packaged junk poured into a pan, called it cooking. And look, I take shortcuts too. Everybody knows that cream of mushroom soup is your fix-all for your casseroles. But I don't do a video about it. You know what I mean? This is so ridiculous. And, instead of trying to save Ontario jobs, he just keeps ramping the heat up and up and up. We saw this actually last night on the debate stage, where Freeland all of a sudden decided to open up a new battleground on the exports that aren't hers. She said that she would prevent potash, or at least tariff out the door potash from Saskatchewan. They can't do that. That's like Alberta Oil and Gas. It's owned by the province. It's managed by the province. It's marketed by the province. She can't do that. Now, Doug Ford, and why would you want to do that? It just hurts Saskatchewan miners and American farmers. Doug Ford really, really, really wants to hurt Ontario workers, and it's his job to protect their jobs.
And Sheila, all joking aside, Canada cannot survive a trade war with the U.S.
Definitely not.
So all this bravado, we're going to shut down your electricity, we're going to cancel big tech contracts. You're only, basically hurting Ontarians. And here's another clip, Sheila. I don't know. I want to get your opinion on this. He said something about how long he intends to be premier.
This is an odd thing.
Yeah.
This is odd. It's a weird sentiment to have.
It kind of channeled what people in banana republics say. Here, folks, check it out.
Will this be your last provincial election?
Boy, you're asking a question, man. I want to be premier forever. You know, I want to beat out Hazel McCallion with a number of years. God bless Hazel. And she's looking down on us. And I can tell you, Hazel McCallion is cheering for us. I'll guarantee it. 1,000%.
He's sure the ghost of Hazel is cheering for him. Is that what he thinks?
Yeah, Hazel has a weird way of showing how she cheers. She endorsed Bonnie Crombie right now, Doug Ford's chief rival,
Right,
as her choice for mayor of the city of Mississauga. But I mean, this idea forever, Sheila, images of Napoleon crowning himself come to mind.
I think it's just weird. Like, a good politician knows when they've worn out their welcome.
Yeah.
And Trudeau figured it out far too late for the Liberal Party, which I think, as a conservative, if you are a conservative, you should be glad for his lack of self-awareness. I guess it's really hurting the Liberals at the polls, but it's not supposed to be what you want.
Yeah.
It's like supposed to be what the people think is best for them, and you're supposed to be a public servant,
Yes.
not a ruler. And so you should never think that you are entitled to keep the job you have forever. You have to earn it every single time. If Doug Ford had said, well, I hope that I can earn the trust of Ontarians for a very long time, and I'll do my best to do that, that would have been a great way of expressing the same sentiment. But this just feels selfish, the same way Justin Trudeau has always felt that he's been entitled to the Prime Minister's office because it's his birthright.
100%. And Sheila, I just thought of something, and I don't have the answer to it. I can only speculate. I'd reach out to the Ford camp, but they don't talk to us under threat of calling the police. But anyway, the other personal bailiwick of Premier Ford is his family-run business, Deco Labels, which I understand during COVID made out like gangbusters, printing up all those directional arrows, because you don't want to go southbound on a northbound aisle because, the interaction of another consumer might cause cross-contamination of the COVID virus. But I wonder, how does Deco Labels do in a world of U.S. Tariffs? What do you think, Sheila?
I don't know. I don't even think he cares about business anymore. I really don't. Like, I think he just thinks that if he cared about business, he wouldn't be doing or saying any of the things that he does right now. By the way, Doug Ford in his big mouth got a reprieve that he's probably not entitled to, because we've got some news here. And I'm going to tell you why I think this is happening. So President Trump has just pushed back the tariffs on Canada and Mexico for another month, saying the date will now be April 2nd, which means we will be full into the swing, God willing, and Jagmeet Singh cooperating into the next federal election campaign, although I remain less than optimistic there. I think he's going to keep pushing these down the road until he gets a more cooperative government, where they will drop altogether.
Yeah, Sheila, I think betting on Jagmeet Singh to do the right thing, that's kind of like putting the house on the Washington Generals to beat the Harlem Globetrotters. Ain't going to happen. And I can hardly wait when this election finally comes to fruition of seeing this shyster lose his own seat, which I understand is a very high probability.
Speaking of which, you know what? I know it's not on the list, but I think we should show the Jagmeet Singh interaction with Alexa Lavoie from yesterday, because yesterday was Jagmeet's big day. It was his big payday, okay? He qualified for his multi-million-dollar pension on the backs of Canadians, making us suffer through a government we don't want because, well, what an opportunity to enrich himself, considering he might just lose his seat. So he really had to, use a hockey phrase here, rag the puck as long as possible. Alexa put the question to him, and let's watch this because I think David and I have some stuff to say about the other media here.
Mr. Jagmeet Singh, I know you don't want to answer my question, but I think you have to listen to it. You have to listen to
I won't answer the question, sorry. But I'll take the other questions.
To ask my question.
I want to respond to it.
If you don't want to answer it, it's up to you, but you don't have to discriminate the journalist. Do you have any regret about forcing Canadians to
stop.
live under a government they don't want so you can get richer? Because congratulations, today you are eligible for your pension.
Like I said, I'm not going to be answering your questions. Is there any other question? Est-ce qu'il y a des autres questions?
To vote against the government at the earliest opportunity, as you say, before Christmas?
You know, what would have restored my faith just a teeny tiny bit in mainstream media, Sheila, is if the mainstream journalist that got to ask a query to Mr. Singh after Alexa's attempt asked the exact same questions, right?
Yeah.
But I doubt they did. That would be too impolite for His Grace.
Where are the insufferable mainstream media crybabies who cried last week because Pierre Poilievre would not take their questions? And there's a reason why Pierre Poilievre wouldn't take their questions, and it's because the mainstream media cabal protects exclusive access to politicians on the parliamentary precinct. So to make it fair, take a few independent journalist questions on the outside. It's the least a politician concerned with fairness in the media would do. Now, where are those same crybabies defending Alexa Lavoie, right? Why won't you take our questions, right? Well, why aren't you sticking up for Alexa?
Yeah.
What are they going to claim? What are they going to claim? We didn't know. Again.
That's what they said to me,
I
Sheila.
know.
A decade worth of refusing our entry into press conferences, into the House of Commons, even arrests of journalists. Yes, I speak of personal experience. And folks, Sheila's absolutely right. I was at that presser. We had one mainstream media person, I don't know his name, but he yelled out loud, I have to clean it up for a family broadcast, "This is effing bullshit," meaning that the mainstream media got shut out. And we had Nathaniel Dove of Global. You know, he's a nice guy and everything. But between every journalist in the independent media getting a chance to answer a question, he yelled the same thing. Why won't you take questions from everybody? Okay, that's a fair question. I'm not about censorship. I'm not about exclusion. But where the hell were you guys on the taxpayer teat for 1 decade when we were being denied access? You can't have it both ways, Sheila.
Well, where were they yesterday? Now they do know, right? Because these guys all got together and cried their little eyes out, cry bullied on the internet for several days after they were denied questions last week. So now they can't say they don't know. Now we can take that sting out. Because before it was, oh, we don't know, which makes us bad journalists who don't know about our own industry, or we don't care, which makes us hypocrites. So now you do know, which means you're just hypocrites. Good old-fashioned hypocrites. So congratulations to Jagmeet Singh and the mainstream media for showing us who they really are yesterday.
Yeah, and by the way, Sheila, I just want to say one thing. The CTV cameraman, he was a freelance cameraman, but he was doing an interview with me outside the presser, and I gave him as much time as he wanted. And he said words to the effect of, so do I get from what you're saying this is a measure of retribution, the mainstream? And I said, no. I said, please don't put words in my mouth. I'm not asking anybody to be excluded. That's A. B, with all due respect, my friend, you're with CTV. Do you think maybe your exclusion had something to do with your news agency slicing and dicing a Pierre Poilievre quote last year to make it look like he said something that he didn't, to which he had to say, I'm not familiar with that.
Right.
It was only front page news, Sheila.
Right.
Jeez.
Again, like I said, you can be an idiot or you can be a hypocrite. I guess you get to choose. You can choose. I'm good with you being either one.
Or both.
Yeah. Let's go. We've got time for one last story. I'm going to skip the last two just for YouTube sensibilities. But this one from Blacklocks. Farmers okay on climate. And this is according to federal research. You know, the last night, you know, they touched on farmers ever so briefly, but not all farmers, not, you know, export farmers in beef or canola or pulses. We're the world's largest exporters of canola and pulses in particular, to India because it's a cheap importable protein for the developing world. It's essential. We didn't talk about those farmers and how we're being crushed by carbon taxes and regulations and attacks on conventional fertilizer. We didn't touch on those. We only talked about protecting quota farmers and their gouging of the consumer. But the feds always talk about we have to fight climate change, and farmers know how important the fight against climate change is. Look, as a farmer, I don't think the climate is changing. But if it is, it's for the better for Canadian farmers, according to the federal government's own research. So this is from Blacklock's. Climate change will generally benefit Canadian farmers with longer frost-free seasons, says the Department of Agriculture. The analysis contradicts public opinion surveys showing climate alarmists fear looming food shortages. It will create more arable land further north. We won't have to rely on crop science to make crops that we can grow in shorter seasons in the Canadian climate. Like, it will be better for the food supply. And again, we're a net exporter of food. So it says, acknowledging that a range of future scenarios is possible, the projections shown here are the most likely climate outcomes, assuming high greenhouse gas emissions, the department wrote in a series of climate change profile reports. Researchers acknowledge farmers may see more extreme storms, whatever, and new pest pathogens and disease, as long as we're not next door to the cricket farm. Warmer winters, but predicted net benefits in many provinces. They talked about the Pacific Coast Lower Mainland, which is like the greenhouse breadbasket. British Columbia interior could expect more extreme heat in summer and sudden cold events in the winter, but Alberta's Peace River lowlands, which is like huge farms, like your huge cereal crop farms. Temperature increases may lengthen the frost-free season. Increased forage production, crop yields, and crop diversification may be possible with the warmer temperatures. A longer growing season could extend the grazing season for livestock, resulting in less winter feeding. So expensive. A warmer climate may increase honeybee activity, but could also increase honeybee pests, i.e. mites. The Northwest Territories, we'd get earlier growing season, Northwest Prairies, I should say, earlier growing seasons. Longer growing season could expand cropping options. To point that out, we've been a net food exporter for 158 years, and climate change would make that even more robust. And this is the government's own data, but make sure you pay your carbon tax increase on April 1st.
So, Sheila, I'm going to encapsulate everything you have to say with one simple rhetorical question. If the province of Newfoundland, thanks to climate change, becomes the next great wine growing region, what's the downside?
You mean the next great wine growing region again?
Yes, because the Vikings evidently used it for that hundreds of years ago.
Hundreds of years ago, it was warmer there. They had grapes that grow there that now it's too cold to grow there. And yet, make sure you pay your escalating inflationary taxes on your SUV to stop us from being able to grow more food and make food cheaper for Canadian consumers and for export around the world.
Yeah, but
what's
Sheila,
the downside?
Let's be honest, for the likes of Carney and Gould and Freeland, the farmers you speak of who are doing such important work in, that little thing called feeding us, they live in flyover country, as
they vote conservative.
Yeah, well, that too. But the supply managed commodities, they're special farmers. That would be dairy, chicken, eggs, and turkey. And I'll tell you, Sheila, back in the early 90s when I was working for a food service trade magazine, I took about 6 months out of my life to research how supply management came to be. And it is scandalous. When Trump talks about tearing down, say, tariffs of U.S. milk, which are almost 300%, how can anyone argue that he doesn't have a case? It is a closed market.
Right. He's exactly right. Yeah. But I continue to point out that the people in the Peace region, the people in the interior of BC, the Canadian prairies, we unfortunately vote conservative. And we really vote conservative. And so they don't care. They just don't care They don't care what they do to us. It's not a lost vote, so there's no buying our votes off.
Do you think Andrew Scheer regrets going back to, what was it, 2018, the Conservative Party leadership convention, when he was seen chugging down a carton of milk because the Quebec dairy farmers came to his aid in a last-minute push to propel him over Maxime Bernier by about 1% on the 13th ballot? Do you think, given Scheer has his roots out west, that was kind of a regrettable photo op to do, Sheila?
I don't think so, because he is the leader, right? Or he was the leader, right? Like the ends justify the means, I guess. All right,
Sad.
we've got one. I know we've got one quick ad read and then a quick chat, and then we will wrap the show up. So this one's from Truth Social. If you're looking for a great place online for news, discussion, and entertainment, then check out Truth Social, Donald Trump's social media website. You'll get breaking news stories and commentary from top media figures if you want to see Trump's legendary, and they are good, Truth Social posts. Then get on Truth Social today. Join a growing community of patriots on a free speech platform designed to avoid censorship and cancellation by big tech. Make your voice heard. Join the movement. Join Truth Social. And then we've got one quick chat here from Standing Bear. It gives us $19.99. I think this comes to us by way of YouTube Super Chat. It says, "Hey folks, Zelensky and Putin just erased Canada's leverage. What's next for Ford, Trudeau, and all?"
I'm not sure how to answer that question, Sheila. What do you say? I mean, do we even matter on the world stage?
No, not really. No, I mean, we used to.
Yeah.
Think about, just harken back to the Harper years. We had a strong moral foreign policy. We no longer have that.
Yep.
We had a strong economy with a serious person in charge, and not serious as in boring like Mark Carney, although Harper did have boring vibes, but you knew he was kind of funny and he had a bit of a personality, right? He had a little bit of snark in his back pocket from time to time. You didn't feel like he was drinking your psychic energy all the time through a straw, like with Mark Carney. It was just a different time. The West felt respected. Farmers and gun owners were not treated like yokels. A lot of things have been done to this country in 10 years. The culture has been changed by the Liberals, and it's going to take a long time to undo it.
Yeah, and speaking of Ukraine, isn't it perversely ironic, Sheila? We don't even pull our weight in terms of GDP, in terms of NATO funding. Although Blackface says we'll get around to it eventually, 2032. No, I don't think so, and certainly Trump doesn't think so. So keep an eye on that file. I think that's going to change in the months ahead too. So, well, Sheila, thank you so much for jumping in on this Wednesday, and thank you to Standing Bear for that financial contribution. Much appreciated. I will be back with the aforementioned Sheila Gunn Reid on Friday, our usual spot, Friday and Monday. Tomorrow, there will be Sheila Gunn Reid with a rebel to be named later. In the meantime, as always, folks, stay safe and stay sane.
Polls show that Canadians are most worried about the threat of Donald Trump. What is your party doing in regards to responding to the overwhelming opinion of Canadians right now that they are worried and they are anxious about what Donald Trump will be doing in this term to Canada's sovereignty?
Look, we've called consistently for the House of Commons to be unlocked. Justin Trudeau and Team Carney have decided to padlock Parliament. We put forward a plan, Pierre Poilievre's plan, to bring forward a bring it home tax cut that would help grow Canadians' paychecks, that would help grow jobs in this country, help improve investment, to take down interprovincial trade barriers that have been left in place after 9 years of the Carney-Trudeau Liberals, to have these conversations in the House of Commons to remove the carbon tax, which is a self-imposed tariff put in place by Justin Trudeau, supported and encouraged as not having been high enough by Mark Carney. These are the conversations, these are the debates, these are the decisions, the laws that need to be passed in Parliament. Conservatives have called for Parliament to be reopened to deal with it. But what's happened is Canada was given a 30-day extension, a reprieve from Donald Trump's unjustified tariffs on Canada. And what have the Liberals done? They've turned away from that, turned inwards to deal with their internal party politics. The best effort that we've seen from them so far is apparently they're handing out friendship bracelets on Capitol Hill. That's not going to cut it. Canadians are worried about their jobs. Canadians are worried about our sovereignty. I have to say that Conservatives have been crystal clear. Canada will never be the 51st state. We're a proud country. We're a proud democracy. Part of that democracy is our parliament. Why has Justin Trudeau padlocked it?